Please welcome to the stage the President and CEO of the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce, Shannon Full.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, yes, you are alive out there. That's awesome. All right. Thank you all for joining us today at the Delta by Marriott. And thank you to those who are tuning in to the live stream from across the entire upper Midwest. I hope you are all prepared for incredible conversations, shocking presentations, and impressive innovation that will keep you thinking and acting well after the event is over. Thank you to the Delta and their team for hosting us in their beautiful venue as we explore the cybersecurity and technology landscape of today and tomorrow. While we are gathered here today, I'd like to provide a major update for you and invite all of you to participate in our community's multi-year Good Jobs Challenge Award. Together, we are designing and implementing regional workforce training and sector partnerships in multiple industries, including cybersecurity and IT. In partnership with the U.S. Department of Commerce and Economic Development Administration, that will place at least 900 individuals into good jobs within our region and create tremendous momentum for our future. We are nearing the end of our system development, or phase one, as we call it. We will call this phase research and design. This phase is funded by 7% of the award of the multi-year grant and sets the stage for program design. We have been working behind the scenes, engaging educational, nonprofit, business, and workforce partners to set the foundation to a regional systems-based approach to workforce recruitment, training, hiring, and retention. We've collected data, met with businesses to understand the workforce needs, and are recruiting educational and training programs that align with the industry needs. We are also seeking nonprofits who serve our community in essential wraparound services of childcare, transportation, and English language to address the barriers of upskilling and training. So now as we enter phase two, we invite you to become an active part of the Good Jobs Challenge program in various capacities. First, you'll see that cute little card at your tables with a QR code that will take you to a survey where you can tell us more about your workforce needs. This is a really important part of this phase, so I highly encourage you to take the time, regardless of your industry, and complete the short survey because your voice directs the next steps of this phase. Skilled positions in cybersecurity and technology are among the most high in-demand occupations in our region. With our lead partner, Emerging Prairie Digital Academy, we are establishing a foundation that will lead to powering our regional competitiveness and inclusive economic growth. It expands equitable job opportunities across our underserved populations and communities, and building work-centered, employer-led training systems, and integrating diverse local stakeholders into workforce training partnerships in our cybersecurity and technology sectors. Next, are you a business leader looking to shape the future workforce? Share your hiring and workforce needs with us. Collaborate with us on industry-specific initiatives and become a hiring partner. This will be a direct pipeline into your workforce needs. So enroll your apprenticeships or discover how the Good Jobs Challenge can serve your organization's growth. For those of you that are in the nonprofit space, or those of you that know nonprofits that work with new Americans, refugees, immigrants, justice-involved individuals, BIPOC, veterans, women, or high school students, or provide essential services, we want to learn more about your mission. Share how your organization and the community, your capacity needs, and explore ways to align with the Good Jobs Challenge community for maximum input. Educational institutions offering programs in agriculture, manufacturing, and cyber IT are critical partners of ours. Join us as we seek innovative educational collaborations to enhance the impact of these wraparound services. All of our education entities can be part of the industry collaboratives that drive this change. If you're involved in our region's workforce ecosystem, your insights are invaluable. So we continue to seek your input, expertise, and experience to enhance workforce attraction, development, and retention. Together, we can leverage community resources to meet our region's workforce needs. So let's move ahead with determination and unity. As a reminder, the Good Jobs Challenge program stands as a beacon of opportunity, transforming lives and propelling our regional economy towards unprecedented growth. Together, we're crafting a skilled workforce that will drive success in agriculture, manufacturing, and cyber IT industries. The journey has begun, and your participation will help us shape the future. Thank you for joining us today, and let's continue to create a brighter, prosperous future for all. Now, as we get back to the summit, part of our Midwest Summit series, the Cybersecurity and Technology Summit, serves as a crucial platform to convene the brightest minds and leaders in this space where industry experts, business, and community members can educate each other, work together, and keep our Midwest region connected, competitive, and leading on innovation and technology. Today's speakers will blow you away with their technology, knowledge, insight, and expertise, their stories, and predictions. We are sure you'll have plenty of questions for them, so throughout the event, as usual, you will see a QR code on the screens that you can scan and on your tables to submit any questions for our speakers. You can also visit www.chamberquestions.com to submit questions, especially for our virtual audience. So now's the time to thank and shine a well-deserved light on our sponsors who make this summit possible. The leadership from these businesses is truly unlocking our region's ability to have conversations like this, spanning across 5 Midwest states. Thank you to our premier sponsors, Dakota Carrier Network and Eide Bailly. Both of these companies continue to step up for us, and they demonstrate their commitment to us with their partnership and their sponsorship. Our gold sponsor, Network Center. We've got 3 media sponsors, Inforum, KFGO, and MWC Advertising of Fargo-Moorhead. Silver sponsors, AdShark Marketing, Advanced Business Methods, Bell Bank, Cass County Electric Cooperative, Consolidated Communications, the Delta by Marriott, Gate City Bank, iDigital, Microsoft, Midco, Minnesota State Community and Technical College, Minnesota State University Moorhead, North Dakota State College of Science, Prairie Business Magazine, and Starion Bank. Our corporate sponsors that are being that were shown on the screen, and lastly, our event production sponsor, Livewire. Finally, our event photography sponsor, 5'20" Design Lounge. Let's all give them a round of applause for their support. One other piece that makes the Midwest Summits a little bit unique, but extremely impactful in our region is the collaboration and the partnerships that we have. Our chamber is working alongside 26 other chambers of commerce across Minnesota, Missouri, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wisconsin, who are streaming today's events in their own communities. These co-hosts are on the screen now, and thank you to those chambers that participate with us. Thank you to all of our sponsors and our co-hosts for your support with this important event. We are incredibly fortunate to have a fantastic community and region that steps up and supports events like this. Be sure to check out our premier and gold sponsor booths during the breaks as well. I'd now like to welcome to the stage one of our premier sponsors for today's program, Dakota Carrier Network. Please help me welcome to the stage Troy Walker, Director of Sales and Marketing for Dakota Carrier Network.
Across the country, industries are doing amazing things to care for the people that they serve. From right here in North Dakota, DCN and our 13 owner companies are empowering some of the largest, most critical institutions with high-speed, reliable connectivity and innovative data solutions. DCN helps keep you connected and your data protected so you can focus on what really matters. DCN, your premier partner for secure, reliable, high-speed technology solutions.
Good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you, Shannon. It's great to see a full house here today engaged in this very important topic of cybersecurity and technology. As you heard in our video, keeping your data secure is DCN's top priority, and that's why we're proud to be a longtime premier sponsor for the Cybersecurity and Technology Summit. My entire career has been in technology, and as cybersecurity came into the picture, that became a passion. Regardless of your type of business, keeping your data and your customers' data is secure is very critical. And it's not just the responsibility of the IT team. We are all using technology, which means that cybersecurity is the responsibility of each of us, regardless of your role. A receptionist isn't going to respond to a random email asking for a customer list. An insurance agent is not going to send a policy information through unsecured channels. And an IT person is not going to leave their cabinet door open in the data center. Before I introduce the keynote speaker this morning, I'd like to thank the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber for bringing the summit to life and recognizing that cybersecurity is a business issue and not just a technology issue. Let's give Shannon and the Chamber a round of applause. And now let's kick off the 2023 Midwest Cybersecurity and Technology Summit with something everyone's talking about, AI. This morning, I have the pleasure of introducing our first keynote speaker, Michael Mattmiller. Michael is the U.S. Government Affairs Industry Team Lead at Microsoft. He has previously served as the City of Seattle's Chief Technology Officer, where he's led the creation of the city's Consolidation Information Technology Department, modernization of key enterprise systems, and migration to cloud computing services. In addition, Michael expanded the city's digital skills education program and led a broadband program that has increased the availability of gigabit broadband service throughout the city. Previously, Michael was a consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where he led the federal agencies secure and managed their technology investments. He received a Bachelor's of Business Administration and Master's of Science from George Washington University. Please welcome to the stage Michael Mattmiller.
Good morning. All right, need more coffee? Good morning. Well, hey, it's great to be with you this morning. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be talking about, as I just mentioned, the topic that is top of mind for everyone, AI. And what's interesting about this moment in time and about this technology is that the world has changed so much over the past few years. If we think about what we've been through, a global pandemic, rapid inflation, this return to a new normal where not only are we trying to get back to some semblance of how our workers come to work every day, stay home, but we're also dealing with a shortage of not being able to find the workers we need, not to mention supply chain disruptions and a host of other factors. Across these experiences we've been through, one thing has been consistent. Companies, schools, governments who have started down their digital transformation journey have been able to pivot more quickly. Those who had online services, that had deployed devices to their staff and their students, were able to turn on a dime with each new event that came up. So in this context, we have this new technology. We have AI. Are we seeing that slide? Okay. AI is not a new technology, but it's something that has certainly captured the imagination of our society in the past year since this new tool called ChatGPT came to the forefront. And a quick show of hands, who here has used ChatGPT? Or Google Bard or Bing Chat? Great, about half. Well, this is not just a consumer technology. This is a technology that is being adopted in businesses today. And the impact of this technology is real. It is actually allowing companies to help overcome that workforce shortage. It's helping them modernize processes where you have tremendous amounts of data that have to be summarized or analyzed or new content created. It's also helping create new types of solutions that we as humans just don't have enough capacity to digest new information and gain new insights. But perhaps on a more pedestrian basis, I use it every day to help write remarks, write my emails, and all kinds of interesting things that I don't enjoy doing or I'm not very good at. So I am from Seattle, and I was talking with some colleagues in our school system the other day, and so we were trying to get ready for an individual that had to go to a school board meeting and write some remarks. So naturally, we pulled up Bing Chat, and we said, hey, I'm the capital program manager at Seattle Public Schools. I have to go before the school board and talk about the status of our bond levies. Can you pull some information together on that? And sure enough, Bing thought about it, and it did. It said there's 2 levies right now that are funding our schools. Here's the information. I wanted to actually have it in a table I could pass out to the school board members, so I asked it to reformat the information, and it did. But really what I needed were some remarks. I needed about 3 minutes of remarks that would not only resonate with the school board members, but with the parents in the room. And it should reflect some basic information about the impact these levies are having on students. So I asked Bing to pull that together for me. And it thought about it. Still typing my question. And sure enough, it started drafting my remarks. I didn't tell it how to write remarks. I didn't have to tell it the impact these levies were having. It was able to go out, search the internet, pull together some thoughts based on the fact that this AI model was trained on the vast knowledge of humankind, and so it knew what I wanted. But I didn't like this first draft. I wanted it to be more persuasive, and so I gave it that feedback. And because it understood context, you can see here, it pulled in more examples. It tried to personify this more for the parents in the room, talking about the impact at Rainier Beach High School and Magnolia Elementary School. Now, of course, the next step is, this was nice, I could go deliver my remarks. What if I wanted to go talk to a group of 3rd graders and tell them about levies and why they're important, and have them go tell their parents, so maybe they might vote for a levy? I don't know ethically if I'm allowed to do that, but I asked the question. And sure enough, Bing Chat came back with remarks with the knowledge it had just gathered for me, but in the voice of what might resonate with a 3rd grader. And sure enough, as it concludes its remarks here, it actually puts out an ask to the students. It says, I need your help. Go home, talk to your parents, spread the word. Can you do that for me? Can you be my ambassadors? So now, clearly, a first draft. I probably would not print this out and go verbatim and talk to my school board or students in a 3rd grade class. I'd make some edits. But it's a great co-pilot. It just saved me literally hours of my terrible writing and rewriting and editing by giving me something to start with. Just a very simple use case we can all use in our daily lives. But let's actually take a look at a real use case and how businesses are using this technology today.
Car buying is a big decision. It's the 2nd largest thing a person will do after buying a home. CarMax disrupted the industry by bringing honesty and transparency. We have tens of thousands of cars on our website or through our app. And without talking to a human being, customers can get overwhelmed.
The challenge that we had was that we only could create so much content. There's manual effort, there's research, the writing, there's the proofreading.
Our writers can only produce so much content a month. It would have taken them years to produce enough pages to be relevant.
Azure OpenAI service allows us to summarize all of the custom reviews and put it in a simple to read and understandable sentence.
We're able to take content and feedback from a lot of other customers, curate it, and create this very tailored content for a specific car.
Through the fine-tuning process, we're at 80% of the content goes through without a human needing to be involved. We're estimating an individual would take 11 years to do what OpenAI service has done in days. We have seen a significant increase in our search engine optimization.
Now, the editorial team, they're able to focus their time on the areas most beneficial to the company and to our customers. There's so much possibility with OpenAI service. We're innovating at a scale, at a pace like never before. It's going to change everything we do.
So just one example of how this technology is being used today. CarMax, hundreds of thousands of cars sold every year, they don't have enough copywriters to write descriptions of the cars as they come on the lot. They're able to use generative AI to look over customer reviews, past content, and generate the information that it would have taken 11 staff years to produce in a matter of days. It's not that CarMax then is going to get rid of their editorial staff, it's that their editorial staff didn't have time already to do this work, and now they are freed up to focus on higher value, more impactful activity. So you might be thinking, with this change, how is it that we got to this place? Well, AI is not a new technology. AI was first thought of in the 1950s as a way of saying we should be able to use computers to augment human intelligence, artificial intelligence. The first commercial application of this technology was in 1959 with machine learning. This notion that we should be able to use neural networks and mathematical models to make deterministic predictions of what a person is looking for. In fact, the first use case, commercialized use case of AI was from the phone system, from Bell Labs. If you remember back to the day when we had copper wire telephones that were noisy before we had all the digital technology, we had an issue with static on voice lines. And what Bell Labs realized in 1959 is they could use machine learning to make a guess of what was a human voice and what was static and minimize the sound of static on phone lines. 1959. Of course, this technology continued to progress with deep learning, the ability these models could have to challenge themselves and improve the outcomes, and then finally to generative AI today. Now, with these more recent developments, what's interesting is they take incredible amounts of compute and storage to make advances in AI technology. And what's changed in the past 10 to 15 years is the advent of cloud computing. The fact that we can build hyperscale data centers with almost unlimited amounts of compute and storage available to Microsoft and technology companies, but to anyone, to enable the level of capacity necessary to now build and improve AI systems. So what's in a name? So AI is this technology that is used to augment human intelligence to make educated guesses about what the next event in a sequence might be, technology that we've used for some time. But what generative AI technology is instead of building a model to a specific use case, we can pre-train models and build models that understand the whole of human intelligence, to train these models based on everything on a large corpus of data and be ready to answer generalized questions, like we just saw. We did not have to build a model to understand Seattle Public Schools' bond levies. We had a pre-trained model that could then generate or transform text we give it into what it thinks is the next series in the questions that we want to answer. You know, one interesting point I should call out when we think about the history of these services is, again, just that impact of cloud computing as enabling the ability to train a generative AI model. It was in the 1980s that the Library of Congress wanted to digitize every book known to humankind. No small order. And in the 1980s, they had to buy a lot of physical storage to put all that digitized information. Now, at that time, the cost of storage for every book ever written was $4 billion. Today, that same amount of storage, if you were to go out to Best Buy and procure it yourself, would cost less than $1,000, and it would fit in the size of your hand. That is the power of how technology has evolved, and then you think about how that fits with cloud computing, with the vast amount of storage that sits in data centers across this country, and that is how we now have the capacity for generative AI. So what can this new technology do? Well, as we saw, it helps with creativity. It wrote some remarks. It can help with productivity. It can help us in our day-to-day work to think more efficiently. In the CarMax example, we saw it can be built into workflows to consistently produce some summarized results. It can also, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, cure cancer. And what I mean by that is, if you think about all the research, all the science that has gone into doing something like genome sequencing, we now have an incredible amount of data that humans are studying to find new solutions to human ailments and illnesses, but that still takes research time. Because of the capacity of these pre-trained models and the capacity of cloud computing, we can now put so much emphasis into identifying potential solutions and narrowing the list of what humans then need to go follow up on for research, that it can accelerate new treatments, new discoveries in science, and that is happening today. So AI isn't perfect. As we know, we've seen stories of hallucinations, we've seen stories of it getting answers wrong. But what's interesting is human beings aren't perfect either. You can see my work every day just to see how many mistakes have to be cleaned up. But AI is getting to the point where it is equivalent to the accuracy of a human being. It was in 2016 that AI first reached the level of parity with a human being on object recognition. A car going down the street, a dog, a type of building. And as you can see, we've had other milestones, and these in particular are coming out of Microsoft research, that's from the point of, say, 2021. AI can write captions with the same level of precision as a human being trying to write captions on a live event. And then just this year, with the advent of generative AI, or excuse me, in 2021, question answering is getting to the point where a general AI model can answer a question in the same way that a human would be likely to, with about the same level of accuracy. It's for reasons like this that a vast majority of organizations believe AI is going to help empower their business and be a competitive differentiator. But at the same time, we need to make sure that employees are excited, and guess what? They are. Employees do not see AI as a potential job loss. And in fact, we don't believe that AI is going to be eliminating jobs at scale. It's going to change jobs. And it's really going to help us solve this issue we see where we don't have enough amount of time in our days today. Imagine if we could offload some of our work to a generative AI solution or some automated aspect of the tools we already use. It's for reasons like this that we have employees not scared of AI, not trying to block it, but 70% of employees would be willing to offload some of their tasks to AI today. And managers see this as a way of enhancing their team's productivity. We at Microsoft released our first generative AI-enabled product last year. Folks may be aware that Microsoft has a company called GitHub that builds software coding tools that help employees write code and share their code. Well, GitHub Copilot allowed developers to talk to a chatbot, to a Copilot, and have it generate code for them, to write their code. And this was new. Having written code myself at one point, it's a little nerve-wracking to understand that a technology is going to do something that you thought that you had this unique ability to do. And so we weren't sure how people were going to respond. Well, guess what? Now, for those developers who are using Copilot, more than 40% of their code, nearly half of their code is written by AI, and they feel more productive by more than 50%, because the mundane aspects of coding, putting braces in place, looking up specific functions, writing regular expressions, things that coders didn't necessarily like doing, can now be done for them, so they can move faster. And what I think is most impactful on this slide is that 75% of the developers using this technology, they actually get to work on more meaningful work, things that better use their time and talents. They feel more satisfied in their work because AI is helping them do more. So there's a lot of potential for this technology. The question is, what can we do with it? And so there'll be many different ideas and solutions by industry, by the companies that you already work with your technology products who will start building this into your solutions. But there's also a more day-to-day use, which is, I don't know about you, but I would love to take a day off and not feel like I have to come back and talk to 20 people to figure out what I missed and work a 12-hour day just to catch up. So coming soon to the Microsoft products that you use day in and day out, there will be a new solution, something called Copilot. Anyone in here use Microsoft Teams? Okay, we could see a few more people there. Our Microsoft table will help with that. But let's take a look at how Teams is going to change with Copilot coming soon.
You can start by asking Copilot to summarize all your recent customer interactions, meetings, content you've shared, any issues, and deliverables. Copilot works across your calendar, emails, chats, documents, and meetings to find all the pertinent information. Now you've got a concise summary, complete with citations and sources. You can hover over names, quotes, and file names to verify information or find out more. Now you know product lead times are likely to come up, so you ask Copilot to help you prepare all the details. Copilot synthesizes everything you need so you can feel prepared.
Bad. Just another tool that will hopefully help us all find a few more minutes in our day and work more efficiently. Now, of course, AI technology is only as good as it can be adopted and trusted. And we know with any new technology, we have to focus on making sure it is deployed in a way that is both trusted by the companies, the governments, the schools that choose to use it, and that it is deployed in a responsible manner. And when we talk to companies, when we talk to institutions adopting new tech, we know trust is important to them. In fact, the vast majority of companies, again, 70-some-odd%, they want to know, or they want to have transparency into how the software was developed and how it's controlled. This is not dissimilar from what we learned a decade ago in cloud computing. The notion around 2006, 2008, that you would take all of your organization's most sensitive critical data and the systems that power the day-to-day operations of the organization, take all that and hand it off to a third-party company, sounded a little scary. Companies wanted to understand, hey, how can I trust that a third party is going to help my organization run and do the things that previously my team down the hall could be called upon to respond when there were issues? Well, guess what? We built that trust. At Microsoft in particular, we built the most trusted hyperscale cloud through certifications, through security and privacy commitments, and our technology solutions. And that's when we start to see the new technology adopted. Companies migrating at scale to the cloud, relying on new technology tools, and AI is going to be the same. It's one of the reasons that we started our responsible AI journey at Microsoft about 8 years ago, when we put out a publication called The Future Computed, and we said that organizations like Microsoft need to have a foundational set of values that govern how we approach new and innovative technologies like AI. And so we developed 6 principles. We have 4 core pillars related to fairness, that the technology can have the same impact and benefits across similar communities, reliability and safety, meaning that this technology should be used in a manner that helps advance our society and not something that creates new harms. Privacy and security, of course, building that trust that any data you put into one of our AI solutions is maintained with the same privacy expectations that you would want your data to be handled. And lastly, inclusiveness, making sure that this technology not only benefits all, but brings new stakeholders to the table. And these 4 pillars are underpinned by transparency and, of course, accountability. Microsoft stands by the technology it produces, and we need to provide assurance to our customers that adopt it that it will perform as expected and that we will stand behind it when challenged. I do want to call out one point on our principles here that I think is an important distinction as we start to learn more about AI, because we do see a lot of headlines, and sometimes the headlines say things like, companies are banning the use of AI because it can't trust the privacy of the new technology. And in fact, we've seen this with some specific solutions. And it's true, just like any technology we use or any service we use in life, we know that some companies use data that we provide in ways that may be inconsistent with what our businesses and our institutions require. Well, anytime we adopt a new technology, we need to understand the commitments made by the company that provides it and in the specific context we're using it. At Microsoft, we have a number of technologies available to businesses, government, schools that leverage AI where we do make strong commitments, where we say your data is your data. We at Microsoft will not use it to create new models, to sell to others, to look at it in any way. That is your provenance, not ours. So it's an important thing to keep in mind as we all see news stories that they may be referring to a broad set of technologies and not specific solutions, because there are trusted solutions out there using AI today. So when we developed our principles, we said that we have to create ways to machine this, to actually ensure that our principles are followed day in and day out as we develop new software. So we developed, through our Responsible AI program, a set of standards, a checklist almost, but beyond that, actual practice and tooling that we use every time we sit down to develop a new AI product. So everyone at Microsoft who is an engineer has their list of considerations as well as a risk assessment, or excuse me, an impact assessment they use to assess their AI solutions before they can ship. This helps ensure compliance with our principles, but also it allows us to be more transparent. As part of building new AI solutions, we have committed to releasing transparency reports about how AI is incorporated, what harms or risks we've identified through the development of the technology, and how we have decided to mitigate those risks, as well as any considerations our customers need to know. And those transparency reports are available on our website. Even for consumer services like Bing Chat, you can go and read the transparency report on how that model is trained, how it works, and considerations for use. But we also know that AI is not ready for every situation or use case that may exist today. There are still some use cases or situations where there may be an idea to use technology, maybe AI-enabled technology, and yet the situation is so sensitive that there could be real concerns about relying solely on an AI-based technology in that case. These could be cases where an individual's civil liberties are in question, where we're talking about a healthcare setting, and not a healthcare setting where a doctor or a nurse or a practitioner may be relying on AI as a co-pilot, generating that first draft of an encounter note, but a situation where AI is solely being asked to make a decision about someone's treatment. And we're also talking about human rights. If we're talking to a customer and they ideate a use case that sounds like it could fall into one of these categories, we at Microsoft have a committee, our Ether committee, comprised of Microsoft leaders, academics, experts, and they will consider the use case, the ethical implications and risks that come from using AI, and they will sometimes tell customers, it's not the right time to use AI. That's not the right use case. Here's why, and here's some other approaches that can be taken, because we don't want to create those harms per our principles. So we do feel that responsible AI, taking an approach to not only developing AI solutions, but helping our customers deploy them, is one way that we can see more benefit from the technology to build trust that it can do more over time as it evolves, and to ensure that society is benefiting. We want everyone to take this same approach. So the tools I just mentioned, our principles, our standards, they are all available online today for you to begin reviewing and thinking about how to bring these tools into your environment. So there is a particular website that I'm fond of called our AI Business School, where you can go and watch a series of videos to learn about how to envision AI-based improvements to your organization, how to deploy them, and how to do so in a responsible manner. We also have a website with all of our responsible AI tools I just mentioned, our standards, our frameworks, and we also post a number of tools that your technology teams can use to deploy the solutions, AI solutions responsibly, including tools like dashboards that help you see data flows, help you see potential risk based on mathematical models and refine the grounding of your AI solutions, as well as tools where you do make customer-facing or public-facing solutions, tools to ensure the safety of the conversations or the interactions that the AI may have with your stakeholders. So I hope today what you take away, and I know that the conversation will continue with other speakers, is that AI does provide a tremendous amount of potential. It can help us do more with the resources we have today. It can help us solve challenges that we wouldn't have been able to solve otherwise, and we're just at the beginning of this AI revolution. So where do we go from here? Well, the opportunity is yours to have these next steps. First, review the AI Business School. Talk to your technology teams and your companies that you work with about the ways this technology can benefit. Second, if you haven't started your digital transformation journey yet, it's important to get your data estate in order and start thinking about cloud migrations so that you can benefit from all of this innovative technology, because it's only happening in the cloud. And lastly, be thinking thoughtfully about the responsible use of AI. Just because it's a new technology doesn't mean we need to avoid it. It means that we should be forward-thinking and thinking about how to put guardrails in place when it does arrive at our organizations. So I hope this has been helpful, and thank you for the time today.
to the stage Troy Walker, Director of Sales and Marketing at Dakota Carrier Network.
Thank you, Michael. I think people had a lot of questions and concerns about how AI technology is going to impact their organizations, and your perspective can help us to all extend about the possibilities of what the future of AI holds. Now I'm proud to introduce our next keynote speaker, Dr. Behrooz Shirazi. Dr. Shirazi serves as a Deputy Director at the National Science Foundation. He's an accomplished researcher with an extensive background in computer sciences. His area of expertise includes substantial computing, persuasive computing, distributed systems, parallel processing, and computer architecture. His work has been supported by NASA, NSF, DARPA, and the Department of Justice and other organizations. He's been published extensively in well-regarded journals and conference proceedings. We are honored to have him with us today. Please welcome Dr. Shirazi.
Good day, everyone. It's nice to visit Fargo for the first time. I must say that as my airplane was landing, I was half expected to see snow on the ground. By the way, I'm not real. I was generated by ChatGPT. So thank you so much for having me here, and I would like to tell you about National Science Foundation. And in particular, when they invited me and we were having a conversation about what to focus on, it seems like there was a lot of interest to talk about the CHIPS and Science Act. And in relation to that, I would also like to talk a little bit about our EPSCoR program. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about National Science Foundation, and then get into the CHIPS and Science Act, and then a little bit about the EPSCoR. So a NSF 101. So the statutory mission of the NSF is to promote progress of science, to advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and to secure the national defense, among other things. Our budget is about $10 billion a year. And so sometimes people have this misunderstanding about National Science Foundation, thinking that the agency itself conducts research. That's not the case. What the mission of the agency is to provide funding to researchers to enable them to carry out research and technology development. The core of the funding that we do focuses on core and cross-disciplinary research, but we also have funding for technology translation and commercialization, for community building, to get folks around to start addressing some of the grand challenge and societal problems. We invest quite a bit in research infrastructure, and also we have an education and workforce development mission. So here's a bunch of numbers. The agency was established in 1950. As I said, our budget is about $10 billion a year. One of the good things about the NSF is that almost all of our funding, 93% of it, goes directly to research and support of our mission. So very little overhead. As you see, we support somewhere around 11,000 projects per year. About 250 million of that goes to small businesses and supporting new discoveries and translating those discoveries into businesses. Those are happening through our SBIR and STTR programs, in case you're interested. And we spend about maybe 15–16% of our budget on education and workforce development. And finally, we're proud to say that we have supported almost all the Nobel laureates. But those are not the only kind of people that we support. As you see on the right side of the screen, annually we support somewhere around 336,000 people, ranging from faculty to students and even K through 12. So NSF has 8 directorates. Most of these are very much established directorates, have been around for a pretty long time. The two newest ones are CISE, Computer and Information Science and Engineering, which was established about 35 years ago. And the newest one is TIP, Technology, Innovations, and Partnerships, which was actually established because of the CHIPS and Science Act. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Talking about CISE, which is where I am and where I work. Again, computer, you're going to hear a lot of acronyms. Please bear with me. In case you're wondering what those things are, if you just make a note of that acronym and then look it up on Google, you're going to find a lot more about it. So in CISE, our budget is about $1 billion per year. We receive somewhere around between 6,000 to 7,000 proposals per year. And we support typically about 28 to 30% of those proposals. The funding is used to, or goes to about 400 institutions annually and supports about 6,600 graduate students and about 20,000 individuals, researchers, and undergraduate students. We cover pretty much funding to all the states and to territories. And a lot of the minority-serving institutions are also supported by us. So in order to kind of talk about where our funding goes, we need to talk about the budget priorities and budget themes of NSF. So there are 4 themes currently in this fiscal year and probably in the next couple of fiscal years. And those are, as you see on the screen, emerging industries and economic and national security. So we kind of direct our investment towards those areas. Creating opportunities everywhere. I'll talk about that a little bit more. We support research and technology that helps us build a resilient planet. And then building research infrastructure to enable researchers and students and industries and everybody to basically advance our innovations and technologies. So emerging industries and economic and national security. So there was a big lecture on AI. Obviously, this is a very hot topic. We are very much involved in this conversation. And one of our biggest programs at National Science Foundation is AI institutions, or AI institutes. So these are larger scale institutes, research centers that are collaborative across multiple universities and industries. And recently, we supported or announced 7 new AI institutes. There was a little bit of a discussion about safety and trustworthiness of AI. So we have a program called Safe Learning Enabled Systems. That obviously is extremely important. The very last thing we want to do is have AI harm people and, in the worst case, kill people for that matter. We have a pretty robust advanced wireless program. You see the 2 examples there, rings and power. These are programs that are actually partnerships between National Science Foundation and industries. So our industry partners actually provide co-funding for these programs, and the funds go to the universities for technology and research. Semiconductors, let me hold off on that because I'll come back to that in the context of the CHIPS and Science Act. And then cybersecurity is, again, one of our biggest programs at National Science Foundation is cybersecurity. Our previous speaker alluded to that and talked about how important security is. And also, it's the theme of this summit. Our premier program in security and privacy is Secure and Trustworthy Computing, or SATC, as we call it. So this program, as we speak, we are working on rebooting it and start thinking about maybe some of the future challenges and issues that we haven't been addressing in the past few years. This program has a budget of about $70 million per year, so it's a quite significant program. Creating opportunities everywhere. So we have many programs for building pathways for minority-serving institutions and emerging research institutions to get into our normal core portfolio. You see some, again, buzzwords there, expand AI and expand tripods and so on. But basically, these programs are designed to support these minority-serving institutions and basically prepare them and get them set up so that they can take advantage of the rest of our core programs. We have, as I mentioned, a very robust education and workforce development program that includes what we call K through Gray, and it covers both curricula and supporting people, scholarships, and fellowships. We also are very much engaged in cybersecurity discussion, including national cybersecurity workforce development. I'm going to skip the geographic inclusion EPSCoR because I'm going to come back to that and get into a lot of the details of that. Resilient Planet, we have several programs along that topic, including DESK, which is designed for making computing more sustainable. National Discovery Cloud for Climate provides opportunities for researchers to conduct research in that area. And this topic is actually covered in a lot of our research portfolios within National Science Foundation. Research infrastructure, again, that's one of our missions to help build research infrastructure and allow access to this infrastructure. So one of the programs we have is Cloud Bank, which provides basically free access to commercial cloud banks to the researchers that are supported by National Science Foundation. We also provide direct support for building cyber infrastructure within campuses. I'll show you some examples of that later. And we are also building what we call leadership class computing, which is basically a supercomputer at UT Austin. So, CHIPS and Science Act. So this act, as you know, went into effect in August of 2022, and the mission or the goal of it was to bolster US leadership in semiconductor technologies. The act provides about $280 billion over multiple years for American semiconductor research, development, manufacturing, and workforce development. And the idea is that we want technologies that are developed and innovated in US to be built in US. So what is the role of National Science Foundation with CHIPS and Science Act? So the act provided $80 billion in authorization language for NSF over a 5-year period. I hope you know that there's a difference between authorization and appropriation. So authorization basically tells NSF that we can spend that money, but that doesn't mean that they are going to provide us the money to spend. Appropriation means that they have provided funding for us to spend for those purposes. So the second line you see is $200 million over 5 years. So that's additional funding that came to NSF to support initiatives related to CHIPS and Science Act. A part of the act was also establishing the TIP Directorate that I mentioned, Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate. And the goal of it is to foster innovation and technology ecosystems across the nation, establish translation pathways from research and development to practice and commercialization, and partnering to engage nation's diverse talent for workforce development. So I mentioned TIP. One of the premier programs in TIP is Regional Innovation Engines. I'm sure you have heard of that. And North Dakota has actually done extremely well in that competition. So you have 2 awards. One is on Type 1, which is for development of these engines, for studying and getting ready to build these engines. And that has gone to University of North Dakota. And then there is a Type 2, which is the actual building of the engine. So the Type 1 provides about $1 million support. Type 2 provides up to $160 million over 10 years. So that's a little bit tougher competition. There's a notion of first round and getting into a final round. And the good news for you is that one of your projects at North Dakota State is one of the 16 finalists, and you would be competing for that. Yes. Actually, that's not the program that I'm involved in, but I was told that apparently up to about 8 of these finalists will be supported. So you kind of have 1 in 2 chances of success, which is pretty good. Moving on. So as I mentioned, the CHIPS and Science Act mission is to build and support semiconductor technologies in US. So these are some of the initiatives at NSF that have been designed to support that mission. We typically announce our programs through what is called a Dear Colleague Letter, or DCL. And you see that we had a DCL for collecting information from industry and researchers about which areas we should focus on, providing novel architectures and providing affordable access to semiconductor design and production, and also education and workforce development. So FUSE program was put together in order to support novel architectures, about $40 million per year. Then we provided, through another DCL, support for building and accessing, building chips and having access to fabrication. And we also have a robust workforce development program through our ATE program, which is designed for support of community colleges and 2-year schools. And you see that there are several of these activities that have a CHIPS focus, and they're kind of spread across the nation. So let's come back to the geographic inclusion, or EPSCoR. So the EPSCoR program is designed in order to support STEM research and education in states, and increase portfolio of those kind of activities in some of the states that may be lagging a little bit behind other states. The eligibility is somewhat complicated. It depends on the commitment of the state to STEM education and research and development, as well as the history of funding to those states. However, what CHIPS and Science Act did was it froze the configuration of the EPSCoR states until 2027, and increased the support of NSF for EPSCoR states during these years. So this is a somewhat complicated chart. Down at the x-axis are the states, and at the y-axis shows the higher education, research, and development percentage of increase in these states. Like, for example, if you look at Nevada, during the past 10 years, they increased their federal R&D expenditure by 100%, basically doubled. So national average is that red bar, about 33.61% increase. And then you see the breakdown between non-F-score states and F-score states. So on the average, non-F-score states have increased their funding significantly more compared to the F-score states. And actually, North Dakota has done pretty well. The increase of federal R&D expenditure in North Dakota did go up at 42.62%, which is significantly higher than the national average. So why is this important? So if you think about the research enterprise as a black box, and on the input side, you have federal funding coming in, and on the output side, you have the outcome of the research activities. So what are these outcomes? These are production of skilled workers, like bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD degree students that will then join the workforce. It could be patents, it could be research publications, it could be technology translations and commercializations. So the same study that provided this data also showed that actually there's not a whole lot of difference in terms of productivity between the F-score states and non-F-score states. In other words, they're quite competitive when it comes to production based on the funding that was provided to them. So the idea is that if you increase the funding to the F-score states, then you're going to significantly increase the outcomes, which are the things that I mentioned: workforce, technology transfer, and so on, and patents, and so on and so forth. So one of the things that CHIPS and Science Act did was that it made it mandatory for National Science Foundation to increase its support of F-score states over the next several years. And if you look at FY22, we had about a 15% funding for F-score states, and as you see, that number keeps going up. And this year, we are going to meet our obligation, and then we are ramping up to increase support to F-score states over the next few years. So CHIPS and Science Act also includes information on where support for F-score states should go to, and that includes infrastructure building, scholarships and fellowships, building partnerships and collaborations between F-score states and non-F-score states, capacity building for ERIs, emerging research institutions, HBCUs, with whom we are all familiar, TCUs, tribal colleges and universities, and MSIs, minority serving institutions. And then finally, building sustainable innovation ecosystems in F-score jurisdictions. So this is a new category that's added, emerging research institutions. These are institutions that are for graduate and undergraduate education, and their federal research funding is up to $50 million. There are about 500 ERIs across the nation, and 112 of them are in F-score states. So what are the NSF programs that support F-score jurisdictions? One of the major ones is Research Infrastructure Improvement Program, and it has multiple tracks. Track 1 has awards up to $20 million over 5 years for building infrastructure for areas that are critical to the jurisdiction's science and education goals. Track 2 is for building collaborations between F-score states, and it has 2 options: collaboration between 2 states and more than 2 states. And as you see, again, University of North Dakota received a recent award. I believe this was in this year, in Track 2, which is, again, a very good thing. And then track 4 is for helping faculty to basically take on fellowships at other institutions and for training and education purposes. The reason that there is no track 3 is because it was sunsetted a few years back. These are 2 of the new NSF programs which are designed to continue to expand support for EPSCoR states. So these are eRISE and eCore. eRISE is intended for building research incubators for STEM excellence, and as you see, it's a significant program with a budget of about $3.2 million a year, and has a feature that at the beginning years, the first 4 years, the support is up to $7 million a year, and then after that is $4.5 million over 3 years. The collaboration for optimizing research ecosystems, that's designed for building capacity in 1 or more targeted research infrastructure cores that underline jurisdictions' research ecosystems. These are, again, significant programs, about almost $40 million per year. So going back to what I was talking about, which was support for EPSCoR states, I wanted to talk a few minutes about the programs that we in the SISE, again, remember SISE was Computer and Information Science and Engineering Directorate, have in order to support EPSCoR states. And again, you see some acronyms, Expand AI, Expand Tripods, and so on. But basically, what these programs are set up are to support minority-serving institutions and what we call non-R1 institutions. So R1 institutions are research active institutions. Those are institutions that have very high levels of research funding. MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, and the usual suspects are in that category. But our mission is to support other institutions in order to get to that level. And these programs provide these kind of pathways for these institutions to engage. One of our programs is called CC Star, or Campus Cyber Infrastructure. This program is set up in order to support building cyber infrastructure on campuses so that the researchers, the students can engage in research related to cloud computing and cluster computing and those kind of things. You see that the program has a pretty significant budget, about $20 million a year. And for the first time, our EPSCoR office has become a partner in this program, and they provide up to $5 million a year for support of these type of infrastructures on campuses. And you see that, for example, North Dakota State has been successful in obtaining one of these CC stars to build such a cyber infrastructure on that campus. So with that, I'm done, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here and tell you a little bit about NSF, and I hope that you found it informational and useful. Thank you. I understand there may have been a couple of questions, so I would be happy to entertain those. Oh, the questions are here. Oh, okay. The CHIPS Act places a strong emphasis on domestic semiconductor production and innovation. Could you discuss how this emphasis aligns with the goals of the Science Act to promote long-term research investments and ensure a robust technological foundation for addressing future scientific challenges and opportunities? Yes. So, one of the things that researchers do at universities is to design novel and new architectures and chips and systems in order to address, again, some novel and new areas that haven't been explored before. So it's really important that the universities, the faculty, the students have access to local and fast and cheap design and production of the chip so that they can do that kind of activity. For the most part, fabrication and manufacturing of chips, as you know, is no longer done in US. It has been basically outsourced to Taiwan, and it's expensive, it's time-consuming, and there's very little control over what's being produced. One of the significant areas that there's quite a bit of research going on is hardware security. Just because you design a chip that's secure, it doesn't mean that after fabrication, it's also secure, because you don't know what the chip manufacturer may do to your design. So that area is also a very significant area under investigation and support. So I hope that that answered that question. Can you talk a little more about regional tech hubs founded through CHIPS and what these hubs mean for communities across Midwest? As I said, I'm not in the TIP division, so I don't know a whole lot about these programs. What I do know is that these regional engines were designed to build collaborations between research institutions, which are typically academic institutions and universities, industry partners, and regional governments, in order to address some of the regional issues which are helpful in terms of building economic and technology development in that area. So, the engine that you had a whole lot of success with was related to agriculture, particularly in this state and in neighboring and Midwest states. And that would be the kind of thing that would help you build that kind of research and technology development that would be helpful to the agriculture industry, for example, in the Midwest. Does the NSF have a role in mitigating the negative impacts of nation-state online disinformation campaign intended to divide American and destabilize our political systems? Yes. So I mentioned to you that secure and trustworthy computing is one of the major initiatives and programs at National Science Foundation. A big part of that program is called information integrity. So there's quite a bit of support for research that's ongoing in terms of addressing exactly the issue that was discussed in this question. A lot of these issues go beyond the boundaries of computer science and digital technology, and it relates to social issues, political issues, and as a result, one of the divisions or one of the directorates that we have in National Science Foundation is SBE, which focuses on behavioral and social sciences. So we collaborate very closely with that directorate. This is a collaborative effort for us to try to address this issue. Let's see. Can you discuss the global science environment and how foreign relations plays into international research and collaboration? So the answer is that yes, international collaborations, particularly lately, have become quite significant and important within National Science Foundation. And part of it is geopolitical, in the sense that uh, our government, and as a result, NSF, would like to build more relationships among democratic nations. And part of that relationship building includes scientific collaborations. So there is a push, for example, to build international collaborations with what they call the Quad, which is Japan, Australia, India, and US. So we have several international collaboration and partnership programs that are ongoing with countries like this. We also collaborate quite a bit with Israel, with Sweden, with UK, with France, and with EU in general. So the notion is that, yes, you can do a lot by yourself, but through partnerships and collaborations, you are extending your resources, whether they are financial or they are intellectual. You are bringing other partners and other views and other resources in order to address some of these grand challenge problems. So that's a good thing, and we are very much involved in that. There's a tremendous amount about business in the room and online. What are the biggest benefits CHIPS Act brings to small and medium-sized businesses? Well, as I said, the US economy is based on innovation and technology development. So what CHIPS and Science Act is doing is basically providing an opportunity for our scientists and researchers to have easy and cheap and ready access to chips and semiconductors and devices. That's going to imperatively result in advantages for small businesses and medium-sized businesses, because a lot of these technologies and developments are going to eventually translate into practice and into commercialization. I think that's about it. Do we have any more questions? Okay, I have 50 seconds left, so I'll give you 50 seconds back. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mornings can be hard.
Please welcome to the stage Eid Bailey's Director of Cybersecurity, Kyle Hendrickson.
All right, awesome, mic works. So I'm Kyle, I'm with Eid Bailey. We do awesome things. It's my pleasure to serve as the moderator for this panel. Eid Bailey, we're really proud to be part of the communities that we're in and the clients that we serve, and we have a commitment to make sure that we are protecting both from a cybersecurity perspective. I am the practice lead for cybersecurity across all of the Eid Bailey locations. I believe we are 45-ish locations. We just made some new acquisitions, primarily west of the Mississippi. Our home is the Fargo-Moorhead area. This is where we were born as a company. We still feel a special obligation to everything we have going on here. And we are proud to be one of the premier sponsors along with DCN here. With this panel, we're gonna have an opportunity to hear from experts that have a wealth of knowledge and expertise in technology, cybersecurity, innovation, and really everything technology related. And so I'm excited that this is going to be an enlightening conversation. Please welcome our panelists. We have Sean Riley, co-founder of BizBlocks, Eileen Manning, founding partner and executive producer of the Cybersecurity Summit organization, and Dr. Christy Berg, professor and department chairperson for the business information technology side of the College of Business at Minot State University. Perfect. Well, perfect. All right, well, let's start off. Sean, if you want to start, I'll catch you mid-drink here. Let's start off with having each of you introduce yourselves and a little bit about why you believe tech ecosystems are important and highlight some of the main assets needed to build a good tech ecosystem.
Sure, thanks. So, Sean Riley, IT guy, and I've been a little bit of everything over the years. So, CEO, CIO, CTO, IMO, so basically all the EIEO jobs that have been out there. I've done all that fun stuff. And when it comes to a tech ecosystem, raise your hand if you have used a computer in your job in the last 48 hours. Are there any? Either you didn't raise your hand because you're not paying attention, right? So real simply, name me a job today. Anybody, name me a job today that doesn't use computer technology. Amish butter churner is the right answer. Other than that, we're all doing it. And tech ecosystems, it doesn't matter your industry, it doesn't matter where you're coming from, it's absolutely critical to the future of our economy and to everything we're building everywhere. And let's go from there.
Perfect. Eileen?
Hi, I was approached 13 years ago and to build a cybersecurity summit. And I own an event management and marketing firm that has produced summits all around the world, and I came to the table with no cybersecurity knowledge. And I'm sharing that because one of the questions people have asked is, you know, what's your path into cybersecurity? But cybersecurity needs all skill sets and not just computer science skill sets. So 13 years ago, I was approached because Minnesota was, and this whole Midwest area, was identified as, with all 16 critical infrastructure being based there and so many Fortune 500 companies, they knew we were going to be a threat, an attack target. So they wanted to have a summit built that would bring together, and this is what's important about the ecosystem, bring together the public sector with the private sector, industry, military, and government all together. And so from day one with this summit, that's what we set out to do. The other thing that was really critical in building this ecosystem was having all 16 critical infrastructure at the table. Because what we learned in, I think it was year 2 of the summit, is we had somebody from Mayo Clinic presenting on a security solution they had for dispensing medications in the OR. And we had somebody from the energy sector sitting in on that presentation. And he's like, whoa, light bulb. That's a solution that we need in the energy sector. And they had been going to all the energy sector conferences and exchanging information within their sector. But to build a true ecosystem, you have to talk across all the different infrastructures. So that's what I set out to do, and this is guided by, I was originally assigned 5 people, cybersecurity experts, 1 from military, 1 in government, 1 in industry, 1 in academia, and another in industry, to guide me and help me. And then from there, I grew it to a think tank of over 50 cybersecurity professionals across all 16 infrastructure that come together every month to talk about what are their major concerns in cybersecurity. And that's how we build the summit, which is now a 3-day summit with over 150 presenters every October. So, but the diversity of all the different sectors is really critical in building a successful ecosystem. So.
Christy.
Hello, Christy Berg from Minot State University. I'm filling in for Professor Chad Fenner, who is our resident cybersecurity expert and just a recent PhD graduate with a focus on cybersecurity. So I've been in higher education for over 20 years, and as a department chairperson now, I came into the cyber realm because Industry Advisory Council was saying, okay, we're having these issues within our organizations. What's education going to do? How can education help us? How are you going to train the upcoming workforce? And we said, I guess we can help out, or how could we help out? So industry, cybersecurity is a team sport. So we depend on our industry partners to help us train, to help us provide tools and technologies to educate the workforce. So cyber is fairly new to me. Is it new to education? Not necessarily. Education moves a little bit slower than industry, if you didn't know that. So education spends a little bit of time catching up. So that's where I stand, or where I'm coming into this. And in terms of the ecosystem, it takes all of us. We can't operate in silos. So we all have to be part of the ecosystem, or else we can't take advantage of the technology that exists.
Very good. Eileen, maybe you want to start us off here. When we look at United States specifically, are there communities that have built successful technology ecosystems that we should try and emulate?
I'm hoping that's one of the reasons I was invited here today, because of the community that we've built through the summit, because today it brings together people from 27 countries. But there are other great organizations like Women in Cybersecurity that have put together, they're bringing cybersecurity education and helping people understand how to enter the workforce and deal with different issues, and those chapters have started across the entire country. So that's another good example of women in cybersecurity.
Perfect. I guess I'll open this up to everybody here. What role can industry partnerships with educational institutions play in fostering and building the next generation of skilled workers that we all need as a society?
Let me start, and then Sean can add to this. We're very fortunate within the state of North Dakota to have had aggressive leaders such as Sean Riley and Governor Burgum put forth the K20W initiative, where cybersecurity became a focus and brought to the forefront for all of our classrooms across the state. So we began in kindergarten, and we're pushing it through the workforce. In fact, just this summer, Minot State hosted a cybersecurity workshop for education, teachers in education, support staff in education on our campus. And we're just helping to upskill those professionals so they can stay in line with the training and also bring it to their classrooms.
So I like the audience participation, so I ask you guys questions every time they ask me a question. But so let me ask you guys, how many of you have hired someone fresh out of any college, not just local, but any college anywhere, and you're like, wow, they do not have the skills to work here? And you're laughing because people don't want to raise their hands, right? So this happens a lot in today's world, right? These are smart kids. I'm going to say kids because my kids are in college right now, but they're smart kids. They're smart young adults. The colleges are smart. We are teaching good things, but the things that we are teaching often don't align to what the needs are, right? The reality is our industries move faster than most of the time the education system is able to keep up. Right? The education system is kind of leapfrogging constantly versus we're in this extraordinarily fast evolutionary curve. So how do you get in front of that? We have to have partnerships between the university systems, the K-12 systems, and the industries. And that component has all kinds of ways in which it can show itself. It may be gamification, right? One of the big things that I love seeing right now is taking cybersecurity knowledge, gamifying it, and having middle school kids and high school kids playing games, video games, that are all about cybersecurity. And those games are evolving with the industry. And that's something that we do within our cyber sports programs, one of the things that sits under the venture studios that I work with every day. Those type of things are partnered to companies like yourselves, understand what it is that's going on. We're adding into the education on a constant basis. We're evolving the education much, much faster. And it doesn't just happen at middle school and high school, it happens in colleges too. But it's something that we have to be diligent with, and we have to absolutely push forward, is make sure that as an industry, if you are raising your hand about that question a lot, and you're saying, wow, I'm hiring people and they don't have the right skills, it's probably because there's a disconnect between what the university expects the knowledge set to be versus what you expect the knowledge set to be. And we have to get those partnerships together so that everybody wins, right? The student wants to be able to come in and do a good job. The college wants to produce a student that is going to do a good job for you, and you want to hire someone that's doing a good job. So we all should be on the same side, but we have to make sure we have a closely integrated communication to make sure those skill sets are being delivered.
I'd like to jump in on that. And first of all, North Dakota, you guys are doing amazing things with your education, cyber, kindergarten through PhD. It's fabulous. I only wish every state was there. One of the things, I sit on a board, and I pull industry partners together for schools and universities to, if you're part of a school or a university that's providing any kind of cyber training, have advisors telling you what it is that they're looking for. So we pulled together a high-level group of people from all sorts of corporations to have focus groups and identify what skills that the industry wanted. You hear directly, you go to your customer, ask them what they need, and you'll find it's pretty surprising. A lot of them are, the answers range from here to there. So just get industry's input on how you're creating your educational program.
Can I add a little bit more to the conversation? So thinking about the partnerships, in 2018, there was a cyber strategy that was implemented, and it was addressing the shortage of cyber professionals. So in direct correlation with that, the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security began offering centers of academic excellence opportunities. So Minot State in 2022 became a designated center for academic excellence in cyber defense. And so what it entailed was a close look at the university and at our undergraduate management information systems program, and the rigor of the program was tested to see if it qualified for this Center of Academic Excellence, and it did. So our program at Minot State is on defense, preparing and preventing the cyber attacks, and also information assurance. As part of that CAE CD designation, our students are, the doors open for our students, so they're able to participate in the competitions that Sean was mentioning. They're able to attend career fairs. There's education and training for faculty members and campus administrators. And partnerships are an integral part of this. We have an advisory committee that helps us guide our curriculum so that we stay on task with that as well.
Very good. Being in IT for the last, almost 2.5 decades here, we've experienced one power failure already today. I would think it would be nice to just warn everybody that it's not unusual to have a second. As we transition off of generator, just be aware that we may have a brief pause here.
Did we blame the Russians for the first one?
I didn't. I tend to first blame track hose and construction workers. And I say this as someone who grew up on a farm and who ran heavy machinery, that's where my head jumps all the time first. All right. I believe strongly in diversity and inclusion and different people being able to have different ideas on how to solve challenges. And I think that that's one of the strengths that we have as a nation is we're the melting pot of everyone. And how do you tackle, and I'll open it up to the group here, how do you tackle diversity and inclusion and making that a strength and a priority for how you tackle cybersecurity?
So I was sharing a story that years ago I came home and my husband was sitting on the floor in the garage and he was cussing and he was trying to fix something. I'm like, what's wrong? He's like, I left my tool on the boat. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you need? And he's like, all right, I need to do this. And I'm like, oh, I have something in the kitchen that'll work. And he's like, kitchen tool's not going to work for solving this problem. And I said, just give it a chance. So I went in the kitchen and grabbed this gadget out, I don't remember what it was, grabbed a gadget out of the kitchen drawer and came out and I said, just try this. And voila, problem solved. This is why we need diversity in solving this solution. Everybody comes to the table with a different toolbox. So unless we have diversity, we're never going to solve the problem.
So I look at diversity in a bit of a different lens maybe than what is traditionally seen today. So today, the media likes to think of diversity purely as what I can see, right? I can see you look different than me, so thus you must be diverse. I look at this differently. I said, I'm not looking for how you look physically. I'm looking at what are your life experiences. And your life experiences, if you look different than me, then grew up right next to me, we're probably going to have a lot more similar background than what would be useful in a business environment. So many of you seen me do TED Talks on kind of the background I come from, right? I mean, I grew up in a very complicated way. I today go to places where I know kids have been forgotten. I go to places where I know that people are not thought of well, right, for their skills. And I look for those folks and specifically go after those people. And in my personal world, I've for many, many, many years had a mentorship program where I will search out individuals from very complex backgrounds and say, you are not forgotten, you can have dignity, you can survive, you can thrive. And we pull them out of that and we put them in a program and I help them to be able to move up in the world. Now that's a very non-scalable type of thing for me to do that individually. But the reality is as organizations, we have a real easy tendency to say, well, hey, all my graduates, come from this college and I'm just gonna go after this college. Does that mean that's the only place where you can find highly skilled, really helpful people? No. I go after areas where nobody graduates, right? There's a huge diversity of knowledge there, a huge diversity of background there. And you can sit down with folks and ask a handful of questions and find incredible intelligence in a place where they never went to college at all. Maybe they never had that opportunity. That's how I like to do this myself, and that is a scalable thing within our companies, is to think about not just, hey, I've got my pipeline from this one university, but everybody comes from Yale kind of thing. That's not diversity, that's everybody comes from Yale, right? Go to the places where no one has come from before, do some digging in those places, and you'll find amazing souls who can do amazing work. And that's how we've been able to get a diversity of experience, and that diversity of experience is just unbelievably beneficial to the organization in how people think and coming from different life experiences and from different areas. It's just hugely beneficial across the board.
Well, educational institutions are the melting pot for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's something that we've been doing for quite a while, having a focus on that. And there's so much opportunity within higher education for all types of students, and we offer so many different services that our students are not left behind. They're included. And where I've seen this during my career is with females in the tech industry. 10 years ago, there was 1 to 2 females within a program. Now there's a pretty even balance with females. So that's where it's had an impact in my world.
Well, I'm going to deviate from my prepared list of questions here. I'm going to jump to the screen a little bit here. With many companies and utilizing remote work environments, this hybrid new work world that we hopefully get to keep forever now, North Dakota is blessed with good internet access and a strong work ethic and people that are ready to solve problems. What do we need to do to make sure that North Dakota is producing enough cybersecurity or even IT talent that can meet the world's needs? How do we position North Dakota as a success story to support the rest of the world?
North Dakota has every possible advantage right now. Unbelievable advantages. This is the only state in the country with computer science and cyber science, kindergarten through PhD, right? The only state. This is the only state doing statewide cybersecurity championships, right? Team-based kids playing sports championships in the high schools and the middle schools. The only state doing that. This is the best broadband in the entire country. 99.8% of all homes in this state have broadband. It's under 3,000 or something in that neighborhood of homes do not have broadband here, right? I go to other states and they're still talking of millions of people that don't have access. The education is here, the knowledge is here, the momentum can be here. And all we have to do is continue capitalizing on what we're doing and continue to push ourselves forward. The reality is what we suck at is telling a story, right? And I heard some laughs already right there from that. We suck at telling our story. When I go to wherever, pick it, Washington, D.C., and I check into a hotel, and I've got a meeting there, and I check in, and the lady behind the counter sees my ID and goes, "Oh, you're from North Dakota. That's great. I always wanted to see Mount Rushmore." That's what everybody knows, right? And yet, if you go to Texas, every single person you meet is, "Yeah, this is Texas. It's the biggest, baddest state in the world," and I get it, the personalities are different, but what does Texas have that we don't? Squat, I'll tell you that, squat, right? The reality is that we don't tell our story. And I know it's part of the culture, it's part of being humble, it's part of those aspects. I reflect that. I've been in the upper Midwest for 30 some years now. Absolutely, I lost my accent. None of you can tell me what state I'm actually from, right? But the reality is that we need to be able to tell that story, and that will keep the talent here, and that will bring more talent here. Because if we tell people that there's awesome things going on here, they want to play. They want to be part.
Sean, how many states are actually hiring North Dakota to defend their infrastructure?
Right now, so there's not even 1 million people in the state of North Dakota, and there are over 70 million Americans. That's 1 out of 5 Americans across this entire country that are part of the North Dakota defense grid.
Yeah, you don't tell your story. You guys are doing amazing things up here, and you've had incredible leadership, and we need to. The rest of the country needs to be emulating what North Dakota is doing. I just want to add, though, one additional thing. Sean, you talked about going into the communities and looking at the forgotten, the underserved people and bringing them into cybersecurity. I just met with a college recently, and they have a huge deaf program. And I'm talking to this college, and I'm saying, do you know how many cyber people we need to train? A perfect career path for them. So think outside the box as to where we're getting, and who we can train. Because just because you're deaf has nothing to do with your brilliance.
Maybe this goes a little bit more towards the education side then. With AI and machine learning and all of these things that are going to continue to be buzzwords for all of us for the next foreseeable future and part of all technology conversations going forward for, forever here. What is needed to upskill or reskill our existing workforce to take advantage of these new technologies?
Well, partnerships with our industry advisory councils, they're able to identify what's needed, and it's the skills coming from the students in our classrooms. And to upskill, it's not only the technical skills, but what we're hearing from our industry partners is that soft skills continue to be the #1 key. Most people that come out of an educational institution are teachable and trainable. They may not have the skill set as we previously discussed, but it's the soft skills that we see that are lacking. Once they have that mastered, we can teach them if they have the aptitude and ability. So our industry partnerships and advisory council have shared that. It keeps coming up again in conversation.
Very good. And so once we have people retooled, reskilled, and these new modern ways of doing work, and we are doing inclusive hiring practices and finding diverse talent pools, what tools can we use to retain that top talent, to make sure that we're not having that constant churn of the workforce and retaining those talented individuals within all of the companies that we're dealing with today?
So we're talking about soft skills. There's a soft aspect to the ecosystem that has to be considered. So we're thinking technology ecosystem, bringing people here that are developers and coders and cybersecurity and all those things. Most of those people are human beings. Most of them have families. Most of them want to have a life outside of their work. And the way in which you retain people is creating a community that supports that. So I work with a few projects that are trying to bring large number of folks here from overseas, some from India, some from Kurdistan, different areas of the world, to bring them here to North Dakota. Some from Norway, right? So the people from Norway kind of look like the traditional North Dakotan, and everybody loves it that they're from Norway. And yet when they get here, even, how do they feel part of the community? And when those folks from India get here, how are they part of the community? And those people from Kurdistan, how are they part of the community? Some of those aspects are super, super simple. Shake hands, give a smile, invite them over for dinner, invite them to a baseball game, whatever it is. But the community aspect, the things that all of us here in this territory are really, really known for, right? Being super friendly and building massive communities are the things that create retention. Because I will tell you flat out, when someone feels alone, they will leave. End of story, right? If they feel alone in their community, they will leave that community and they will go find somewhere else. If they feel connected to that community, they will stay, regardless of salary issues and all these other things. This happens over and over and over again. You see this all over the world where somebody's in a situation where, like, why would you possibly stay here? It's because they're connected, right? How many of you are still here because of family? How many of you are still here because you grew up here and you've got community, you've got friends, you've got people around you? How many of you know someone who's moved into North Dakota, me being one of them, who created relationships, who created a community? I knew exactly nobody when I came into North Dakota. I moved into Bismarck, Mandan area. I live now in Mandan, the good side of the river. But I didn't know anybody when I was first here. And the first thing that happened was a collection of people came to me and said, here, come out to dinner. Come have a conversation. Hey, let's go here. Let's do this. They created a community. And now I still live here. And I don't need to be in North Dakota. I can be anywhere I want to be, anywhere, and I'm still here. And I would say just over and over and over again, you create a community. You give people quality of life things that they can live with and around, and they will stay, and they will retain.
I'd like to build on that a little bit. So the quality of lifestyle is, the balance is really critical. We are seeing a huge burnout factor. So how do we retain the people? I'm going to say part of that is up to you, the business leader. You have to understand that cybersecurity, you as business leaders have to embrace it. It's not an IT issue. This has got to be part of your corporate culture. You have to believe, you have to support it. And then the head of security for your companies and organizations, they have to make sure they've given their staff the very best tools and training they can so that when things happen, they can feel comfortable that they're prepared to handle it the best for your company as they can. But knowing that there's that burnout and kind of building a backup for each other so that somebody's not 24/7 defending a problem when the problems come. And also, another thing is to insist on rehearsing what's going to happen when, not if, when a cyber attack happens to your company. So that your whole team knows that executive management is really behind what they're doing and supporting what they're doing and embracing what they're doing. That really goes a long way in building a good cyber culture and keeping your employees.
Let's go back to stories to add on to both of your conversations. When our industry partners share stories with our students in our classrooms about the woes and successes in the field, it then strengthens the theory that the students have been provided, and it also provides a different type of mindset and consideration. When our students have participated in these cyber games, students are able to undertake scenarios where a business is under attack and they're fighting back these threats that are happening. So students are able to reference those conversations and understand that this isn't just a game, this is the real world. This is what's happening out there in industry. So by sharing, we are able to strengthen those relationships and thus strengthen the knowledge that students have and the belief that they have coming out of higher education.
So I'm going to reference a statistic that I know is a couple years old now. I've heard that on game day for NDSU football, the Fargo Dome turns into the 6th largest city in North Dakota by population. And knowing that we have such huge towns and cities in North Dakota that we're all used to referencing some of the larger Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, Minot, and Dickinson, and Williston, and Jamestown, and Valley City, I mean, and Devil's Lake. I mean, that's kind of it, right? I know I probably missed somebody, and I apologize if I offended the larger towns here. But is it an advantage to be in a more rural environment, or is it a disadvantage for us when we're trying to attract that global community of being able to be cybersecurity resources?
Having just moved out of the Twin Cities to Red Wing, who I noticed is online, hey Red Wing, to a rural community, I don't think it's a disadvantage. You've got what you need. You've got really strong broadband. I mean, that's half the battle.
I would say the answer is yes. It's both an advantage and a disadvantage. So the advantage side is you can live the way you want to live, making a wonderful job. I mean, cybersecurity professionals nowadays start at 85 grand a year and it goes up from there, and I pay them 120, 140, 200, sometimes more. I mean, it gets to be kind of crazy, but you can live anywhere you want in a community, everywhere, especially in this state, living a life that is way above the standard of living what you would be able to do on the same salary out on either of the coasts, right? The disadvantage part comes back to that messaging. When I bring organizations here that don't know anything about the Midwest, frankly, most of the companies aren't a whole lot smarter than that person out in Washington, D.C., right? Yay, you've got Mount Rushmore. No, wrong state. You know, they don't know anything about us. They don't realize there's anything here. They're like, okay, so there's 2 cows and a person. And I actually had a company recently where this is a multi-billion-dollar potential contract, and they said, why would we move our teams to the middle of Siberia? That's literally what they said to me when we were talking about North Dakota. And I'm like, no, Siberia is on the other side of the planet. But that's the perception, right? They have this perception, oh, there's nothing here. And again, this comes to a messaging standpoint. that we're not telling the story well. We're not telling people about the freedom of movement. We're not telling people about, hey, you can be outdoors every single day, having a grand time, going somewhere nice, and you can't do that in an LA because if you go outdoors, you start choking, right? I mean, you've got to be able to have this stuff. You tell people that, I can drive across the entire state in 4 hours, but again, if I'm in LA, I've gotten 22 miles in 4 hours. They don't realize the standard of living is completely different. And that is a huge advantage that we have, but again, we're not telling that story well.
Very good. Just to end on a note of positivity, I believe strongly that we don't move ahead unless we start taking action on certain things. And I'm going to put this in the context of cybersecurity. What are key things that we need to put in front of this next generation of cybersecurity defenders to turn them into active defenders? Not just theoretical people, not just people who've read a book, but people who actually know how to actively respond and defend all of the businesses that are in the room and listening online.
Well, let me start. It's funding for the students in the classrooms. So as you businesses are going about your day-to-day operations, think about how you can fund universities and support what's going on in the classroom and providing tech infrastructure. So that's step one.
Cybersecurity is got to be collaboration, and also teaching cyber students and cyber professionals resilience. Resilience is going to be critical, and for us to be successful, and collaboration is going to be critical. This is a global issue. This is not a North Dakota issue, United States issue. This is a global issue, and we have to bring globally leaders together at events like this to share best practices, share intel as to what's coming at us, so that we can best prepare our career people to be successful.
Raise your hand if you'd consider yourself mission-driven. Right? You want to change the world, you want to do positive things, you want to help people, you want to have a great outcome. You got to make money. I get that. I understand that. But you want to do good things. This is a field that needs to be understood in that way. This is an act of service going into cybersecurity. I will tell you from doing this since I was yay tall, that there are a lot of days that this job sucks, right? I bang my head against the wall, or someone bangs the wall against my head sometimes. Mm-hmm. It is a hard job in a lot of ways, right? But this job is an act of service. This is like how we have thought in the past about police and firemen and doctors and ambulance drivers and those kind of folks. This is that kind of job. And that is part of what we have to help people realize. This isn't just being a tech nerd. This is about defending your community, defending your town, defending your country, because that's what we're doing every single day, and we need people to start understanding that essence of the program.
You know, on that note, back in the 50s and 60s, if the United States wanted to defend its infrastructure, they just pointed a missile at Cuba. Today, the military and the government have to work with industry in order for us to be successful, because industry owns the infrastructure. So it's, like I said, all about collaboration.
I'm pausing because there is a unique message that is coming across the screen in front of me here.
They're asking for 5 Bitcoin, and they've told us the power is going to go out unless we give them 5 Bitcoin.
But cybersecurity is not going to impact me.
No, we're good. Well, I thank all of the panelists today, and I will move into the next introduction here. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your insight. This has been very valuable for me. And again, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to do a brief introduction. Dr. Griffiths, if you want to come up on stage here, she's our next presenter, and she's going to dive into our next topic here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you. Get up here. I was a bit nervous as to whether we would have power. However, you know the song, I'm a little bit country, I'm a little bit rock and roll. Well, I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I brought my PowerPoint on paper as well as electronically because it's happened before. And I had to give a talk, and then I'm going, what was I going to say? So I always have my trusty backup with me, just in case. I thought you'd enjoy that, because not too many people do that these days. We become so reliant on our phones and everything else. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a number of topics. I am going to talk a little bit about cybersecurity, a little bit about AI. I could talk a long time about AI, but you've already heard about AI to some extent. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want to introduce the whole concept of quantum computing in a fairly short way, because it's complex, so we'll do that quickly. And then really, the title of my talk is really about the combination of those technologies and why I think they're important and why they're interconnected with each other. So you'll be hearing more about all three together as we go forward. So basically, in the last 2 decades or so, our world has moved heavily from analog to digital, and we've witnessed a very, very rapid evolution in the wide varieties of technologies in our lives. Computers, telecommunications and networks, various devices, phones, home security systems, personal assistants, social media. The list is endless. There's more and more products and services emerge. And consumer demand increases as well. So most recently, artificial intelligence and machine learning have accelerated the technological trends. They have absolutely been around for a long time. And they now act as innovation catalysts for many, many sectors in society. But the evolution of computers and telecommunications and networks and various devices connected to them, along with their functionality and availability and affordability of these devices, it means it's created a vast and complex arrangement of digital entities known as the Internet of Things. And the attack surface, the threat surface, if you like, is defined as the totality of all of those devices. And the more and more devices we have, not all of them things we can see, but things that are now also implanted within us, are actually creating a much bigger threat surface that can be attacked by the so-called bad actors. So really, that's my message there. It's really nothing complex. The threat surface is growing very, very dramatically as all of these technologies have grown along with us. The other thing is, we've always had, well, we tend to think in terms of our technological development about the positive things that technology can do. That's why we develop them. That's why we promote them. But the problem is that there are always people who will abuse those technologies, and there always have been, every technology. And the problem is that sometimes the circumstances in which all these technologies operate changes as well, making us more vulnerable. So I'm really not going to go into each one of these types of cybersecurity threats, but there are very many of them. And the one that's probably worrying most people is ransomware, because we've heard so much about ransomware over the last several years. We've heard about the different sectors that have been attacked. For a while it was hospitals, now it seems to be K-12 schools. Universities are always attacked because we have faculty who play with things and leave the back door open, and professors in sort of techie departments that don't like to do what our CIOs ask them to do. But that's our world, and we learn how to protect them in an interesting way. But as I say, the most common type of cyber attacks tends to be a ransomware attack at the moment. That's within the business and general population. I am not including here the very large-scale nation-state attacks on our critical infrastructures or our national security apparatus. But that's a whole different magnitude of cyber attacks. So the first one, key threats, corporate ransom, we've heard that, and we also have a number of novice hackers that are working in this space. The other thing I found very interesting was a number of years ago we saw hacking as a service. So you can go to the dark web and you can find a service and you can get a hack done. So it's really available to many, many people, and I don't know if you ever thought, please don't go to the dark web unless you absolutely have to. It's really not a very nice place, but it's growing, and the kinds of things that are available there are continuing to challenge us in our regular lives. The most common types of attacks result in payment. I'm going to the next one. The second key threat is dissemination of personally identifiable information. This is what happens with a lot of attacks on government, certainly. All levels of government, from federal now through to local. And our local governments are quite vulnerable to these types of attacks, and so there are now more efforts to try and protect local governments. Many state governments are also upgrading their technologies and equipment, basic information systems that might have been around for years because we knew how to run them and we patched them, and it was expensive to replace them. We're now really seeing states beginning to move to put modern equipment in place. The third type of attack that can be quite serious and actually came to the fore very much through COVID is really the whole issue of supply chain vulnerabilities. I think a lot of people weren't thinking too much about supply chain. They were very comfortable with the supply chains they had, whether they were domestic or international, and COVID really allowed us to recognize that they are just as vulnerable as any other part of the system. They may be one of the weaker links in the chain, in fact. So there are now major efforts to try and ensure that supply chains are better protected and much less vulnerable, and hopefully if you do have a very serious, strong need to rely on supply chain, that you have alternatives now already available and determined. So agricultural states, that agriculture has come rather late to the cybersecurity environment. And so we're seeing sort of now some major efforts in North Dakota, South Dakota, Illinois, West Virginia, on cybersecurity for the agricultural environment as more and more technology is used in agriculture. So a good thing. So I'm going to switch now. So we have all this background with cybersecurity, and last year you heard a lot about cybersecurity, so I feel that you're sort of more up to speed on that. So I want to talk a little bit about AI. And I talk about it as a kaleidoscope because AI is a lot of things. It's not a single technology. It's a combination of technologies and systems and capabilities. It's also, many different things come together, but it's constantly changing. I noticed over the last several weeks alone that things are changing very dramatically. After ChatGPT burst on the scene last November, we've heard nothing but headlines about artificial intelligence and what it's going to mean for our lives going on. But a kaleidoscope, because it's lots of colors and different shapes, but it's really, it seems to some people a kaleidoscope is sort of magical. The first time you see a kaleidoscope, you're playing with it, kids love it. But it's the same thing with AI. It seems magical, but it actually isn't yet. It may be one day, but it actually isn't yet. So we see the headlines. You have the headlines up? Is this? Okay, I just saw myself, so I wasn't sure what was going up there. Here we are. Various headlines. And the tendency of these headlines, they tend to be sort of extreme, and they tend to be rather negative. And I haven't seen the wave of headlines about the wonderful things that we heard. We heard first thing this morning, all about the wonderful things these technologies can do. So it does do good things, don't get me wrong. But now we tend to be focused on the negative and what's really happening in this world. So in order to prepare for this, I was thinking about there are many different components that exist within the artificial intelligent world. Algorithms are the basis. I mean, we all start with algorithms, and I remember when the media learned about algorithms, it's all when searches worked in a certain way, and everybody started to learn about that. Machine learning has become quite significant. Intelligent agents and bots, artificial neural networks, we're seeing are actually the core, is when a lot of AI developments really started to accelerate in about the 2000s. Language learning models, they've been around for quite some time now. They're not new. We've been teaching them for 4 years at Dakota State, but they exist, and there are many of them now, and many of them are now available for people around the world. And then we get into the whole area of generative science. How do you generate something new out of prompts and inputs and requests from an external party, i.e. us, to create new responses. And I think that's an interest. Generative science is really evolving quite quickly, and that's sort of a sequence of different activities and levels of discussion that are going on in AI. Now, I've got one slide here, and I'm really going to skip through it. There are many different ways that algorithms work, so I'm not really going to deal with that. I'm going to go to the next one, if you don't mind. If anyone wants to know the different types of algorithms, we can talk about that. I'll stick around for a little while. But I created this sort of stages of AI development, which I think is important to recognize. We started off with algorithms, and this was in the 50s and 60s. Simple algorithms. Actually, at the University of Cambridge, they were doing machine translation for the European, what was then the precursor to the European Union. Everything had to be translated from one language to another. We played around in the 70s with things like intermediate languages, Esperanto being one of them. We weren't doing Esperanto, but we were creating artificial languages that everything could be translated to. Then we got into using these capabilities for analysis. And as we used more complex analyses and analysis of data sets and different types of data, that moved then towards helping to augment the human. So we moved into augmentation. And then more recently, we've heard a lot more about autonomy. Both, we talk about autonomous vehicles. We talk about autonomous weapons, although I'm not going to talk about those today. But that autonomy comes into the fore. And beyond autonomy, we've got now computers building awareness of things. So computer vision is building an image, an awareness of things in the world. ChatGPT is building awarenesses of what we're doing and how we each individually work and interact. And awareness, it's an interesting term as well, because I don't believe it's not necessarily our awareness. We have to recognize these are not learning and understanding the way we do. I think they're different. They try to impact what we're doing, but they're not there yet the way we do. So computer vision, they see things, they're able to identify things, they're able to classify things, but I don't know if they're seeing what I'm seeing, and I don't know if each one of you is seeing what you're seeing. I mean, we have people who perceive color in different ways. We have people who perceive things in different ways. Beyond that, we have swarms, and swarms are beginning to be very interesting. They were in the late 1990s onwards when we started to have swarms of agents and bots on the internet going and finding things. But swarms can be quite interesting, and actually, if the swarms are all trying to do the same thing. So you get a group of drones that are all trying to look for the same thing. I mean, you do a lot of autonomous vehicles up here across the northern border. If they're all looking for the same thing, they can work quite well together, and hopefully they interact well. And if they're autonomous with each other, then hopefully that will reinforce what they're trying to do. But if you have a swarm of intelligences that are trained in different ways and that are designed to do very different things, then it might be quite difficult to actually imagine how they might interact and how they might affect each other in ways that we couldn't even think to do. We might assume they're working in certain ways together, but they might not be working in those ways. So swarms become a little dangerous in some respect. And then we get into transhumanism. And this is where the machines sort of start taking over and really doing things that we could never do in the ways that we could do it, and they start transcending us, and what happens to us, the poor people left behind. So that's a sort of my sequence of development. And where are we now? We're sort of we're hovering in autonomy, and we're getting up towards awareness right now. And we have few swarms, but swarms tend to be focused, which is good. Now, every technology since the beginning of time, since we created instruments and weapons and discovered fire and things like that, there have been positives and negatives for every technology that's come about. And so there are debates going on right now. For example, people talk about quality of life benefits on the one hand from these new and emerging technologies, but also other people are talking about reduction in individual freedoms. They sort of the seesaw, and it depends where along that line we're going to end up. The promise of technology advancement and mass deployment versus, to some extent, perhaps a growing digital divide as people have access to broadband, number one, and access to other education and other resources. So these are all, we have, I like this one, the zero-risk bomb diffusion or wreckage searching, where we send the robots in and do that versus autonomous weapons development, which people get even more nervous about. So we've always got the seesaw. There was positives and negatives to each of these potential implications. We've heard about the positive uses of AI in financial services and investing, in managing wealth, in detecting fraud. Healthcare is huge. We heard that this morning. Education, it has lots and lots of opportunities, although I don't think it'll quite replace the teacher yet. It'll augment. But you can do a lot of things in advising and tutoring and helping people through the financial aid maze and things like that. Agriculture is becoming very big in its use of technology, and so AI being applied in the agricultural world is quite significant. Mobility with cars, convoys of trucks. I see them coming up and down. I see one day convoys of autonomous trucks driving up and down I-29, quite happy, going at optimum speed, optimum distance, so they all ride, and they're very, very efficient. And then we have areas for concern that we hear about from people, assigning opportunity and risk. If you're going to make a decision using an AI about who benefits, who gets a bank loan versus who doesn't, who gets access to social services versus who doesn't, who gets into a particular college, who doesn't, I think that's an area for concern about how those algorithms work. We need to know more about that so people can, the people who are driving them, in a sense, can help ensure that they're applied effectively. Employment, great concern over job loss. I find it interesting. I went to South Dakota, not as far as South Carolina. I was in North Carolina. One of the first meetings I went to was all about apprenticeships and employment and the labor force. And the big issue was we need more drivers. Okay, we need drivers. And we do need more drivers. We were getting a big Amazon distribution plant there, so we needed more drivers. But at the same time, we're talking about autonomous vehicles. So what's going to happen to all the drivers? Interesting concern, all the Uber drivers and Lyft drivers, if all of these eventually become autonomous. Finance, in the finance industry, there are concerns with AI and the protection of their resources. Healthcare, the same thing. Would you want an artificial intelligence to make a decision? I think you'd want an artificial intelligence to inform the physician, even though nowadays a lot of the AI applications can perform better than the human. But you still want to have that sense that somebody is there taking care of things, especially if they're going to operate on you, if doing surgery. And the surgery might be done by a robot too, but I think at the moment most of us would be comfortable if there's a person in the mix being advised by the robot. Education, same thing. We're going to learn much, much more from these artificial intelligence applications, and we'll really learn what the best use of people's time is going to be versus trying to do everything for everyone. And then the worry about elections, not so much in changing the votes, but more in these influence campaigns that have been launched since 2016, the 2016 elections. I think those are of concern, as there are abilities to really multiply the effect as technology evolves in interesting ways. So I'm going to run through the next few slides. I'm not going to go in detail, but I'm going to read the bottom line and make a couple of comments. So the first concern I have is people seem to be vesting AI with knowledge and authority that it doesn't necessarily have. That's today. I agree. Over time, it's going to get a lot better, but right now we do. And this reminds me of one of the early systems. It wasn't really AI, but sort of AI-like system, ELIZA. How many people know about ELIZA? A handful of you. ELIZA was a system that was designed to sort of triage students, I think it was MIT, students at MIT, before they went to see a counselor. So the idea was, well, the student, it takes a lot of time to get the background from the student before we get to really the real topic. Students are a little reluctant to talk about it. So we'll have this system that will question the students about their circumstance, and then we'll be able to triage them in to the appropriate counselor. Well, what happened was the students liked talking to the machine, and it turns out the staff at the university also liked talking to the machine better than they did with people because the machine is non-judgmental. The interesting thing about it, it was a language model, and it worked on basically replicating the language you gave it. It had a few stock phrases, about parents, mothers. It sort of wasn't quite Freudian, but it was sort of a certain school of psychology. And it would ask questions, and the students would say, well, I'm really feeling down today. And it would say, well, tell me why you're feeling down. And he'd say, well, I just had an argument with my boyfriend. Well, tell me about your relationship with your boyfriend. It was just turning that back on itself. The problem was people really wanted to go there and talk to the machine rather than go in, and so they took it out of service. They felt that this was an inappropriate reaction, but a very strong reaction, in such that it's actually it actually comes back occasionally. It says here, he said, Joe Weizenbaum at MIT, he said, I had not realized that extremely short exposures to a relatively simple computer program could induce powerful delusional thinking in quite normal people. And that's what I love AI, don't get me wrong, and I love evolving technology, but there's a little bit of this going on right now. Everybody thinks the machine is doing it perfectly. And it may be, but I also suspect it may not be. So lots of interesting things there. And then I did ask, one of the early things I'd asked ChatGPT was, write a letter of reference for me. And it wrote a really nice letter of reference. It got a little creepy when it's talking about how honored it was to work with me. But the thing is, there's a lot of information out there about me. If there's not a lot of information out there, it can't do it. But then I challenged it to write my obituary. And then it declined. Politely, it said it was inappropriate and offensive. So I said, well, to write an obituary before someone dies. I said, actually, it isn't. A lot of people have their obituaries written beforehand. But, I was challenging to see what it would do, and it did apologize. And I said, you wrote me a very nice reference letter, and if you know that much about me, you surely could write an obituary, but it still refused, so I didn't get that. So I like just playing. The second thing is deepfakes. We heard about that a little bit this morning. These two very classical deepfakes, the bombing of the Pentagon, which we saw for a few minutes, and then it disappeared just earlier this year. And then we had the Pope wearing a Balenciaga coat that went around the internet like crazy, of course. Deepfakes are of concern, not just because it's very hard to discern the difference. You really have to look carefully. And most of us are skimming, right? Most of us skim these things these days. And then we react, and then we put out messages, and other people react, and then it blows up. So I think we have to be concerned. I think deepfakes around faces and voices. Voices are much more personal than faces. It's easier to change a face than change a voice. But we're seeing more and more of those, and that's the underlying theme of some of these grandchildren schemes, the grandchildren scams that, somebody calls now and it's the grandchild's voice talking to the grandparents saying, somebody's doing this and I really need $3,000 or whatever. Just a variation on the Nigerian scam. This one I didn't think was in there, so I'm going to whiz through it. I won't do it. I did ask ChatGPT to design a Super Bowl-like ad for Dakota State University. Not a bad job, and we showed it to our marketing and communications firm. It did quite a good job, so just to let you know. I asked it to write a poem. I won't go into this, but it's not very creative. I think it wrote a ditty as opposed to a real poem with a lot of thought underneath it. So, I compared the ditty from ChatGPT very nicely. Everything rhymed to the William Wordsworth and his poem on daffodils. Taking the human out of the loop. This is a concern with AI, I think, and we're going to have to move a little bit more quickly to try and ensure that where it's appropriate to take the human out of the decision-making loop and where we should keep them in. Facial recognition systems have been used for many years now. They weren't very accurate, and this here shows that they were very accurate for white faces, but for non-white, darker complected people, not so good, and we've all heard the stories on that. The good news was IBM called in the author of this particular study in 2019. She brought her study, they replicated the result, and then they changed their algorithm. So this is a young woman at MIT, a woman of color, and the recognition system wouldn't even recognize her face. She had to wear a white mask to be recognized. It's a classic story, but very, very interesting. Swarms of autonomous swarms, I've mentioned already. I think swarms can be dangerous. and we need to be very careful when we're connecting different artificial intelligences into more complex systems, because it's become very, very difficult to know exactly what they're going to do, and it's been many years since we were able to really replicate results appropriately from complex systems. So we have to be careful what we're setting off as swarms. And then I did want to add one more thing, which I'm a little concerned. We've heard a lot about the effect of a lot of viewing of TV and videos on the development of the human brain. And so as an educator, I sit and wonder, with the effects of increasing AI, use of AI, and reliance on AI, perhaps by younger people, what that's going to do to brain development in humans. I'm not a neurologist, but there are people, neuroscientists, they will be researching this. But I put it there because it's something that usually I haven't heard anyone talk about, and I think we need to be mindful of it, that if TV alone and watching videos can have quite a significant effect on how the brain develops, then learning 2 languages before the age of 2 has significant impact on how the brain develops in a positive way. So is this going to be positive or is it going to be negative? And what's it going to do to us while we're developing the artificial intelligence itself? So quickly, very quickly, what can we do about it? Well, there was the pause, the pause that was recommended by Sam Altman. I did not support the pause, although many thousands of people did. My thought was, if we go off into the to get our tires changed, everybody's still racing by. Every other country, every other developer, etc. It wasn't really realistic to actually do it, but it raised a lot of attention. And I have to say, I noticed he didn't pause, and he didn't have people pause plugging in, so he did quite well out of that. So no more said. Transparency, declaration, explainability and accountability are what we're pushing for in the development of AI. It's one of those things that people don't like to do. It's like documentation. Oh, now AI can do documentation for us. So hey, that's a task we could get rid of. But we've still got to tell people what's happening, where these systems came from, what are they trying to do, and let's make everybody involved in the chain of development of AI a little bit more accountable. Testing, evaluation, validation, and verification. Again, one of those things, there's probably a certain amount of testing. How much testing is done? Of course, it takes time. It reduces, and it takes longer then to get to market, and the big push tends to be first to market in the business world. So how can we balance these effects? And I think we'll start to see third-party validators of various systems and so on. I think we need to keep the human in the loop as much as possible. Enough said, really. Information, communication, and education is going to be key. People need to know and understand a little bit about how these things work. Some people will know more. College students should learn a lot about how they work, because they'll be out in the real world in a few years doing that. And then we have regulation, which is what's going on in Washington right now. They're trying to decide what to do in terms of pieces of regulation. The European Union had its proposed AI Act, which is now being implemented, a very comprehensive act, top-down act, which will not work in this country. It's not the way we do things, that top-down. So we've got lots and lots of different pieces of legislation right now that are being proposed, and the dilemma is we don't have a broader framework to plug them in and make sure we're covering things. So right now, there's a lot of work going on in Washington about how we move forward in this respect. And I should tell you, I was one of the people, I was honored to moderate the 3rd AI session for the Senate, and it was very clear to me there's very little knowledge about what AI does, how it works, how we can protect it, and so on. So I think that, as I say, education and communication and getting more people who are up to speed and those capabilities is going to be very, very important. I've got some key questions here. I'm going to leave this one. These are research issues, so anyone who wants to do research, we've got some key research issues here. But I want to talk briefly about quantum computing. Quantum computing, probably just started to hear about. We've been experimenting for a few years, but this leverages the power of quantum physics, subnuclear, little particles, with energy, and tries to put them into a way where we can start really increasing the power and compute capabilities of future computers. Standard computers deals in ones and zeros. A bit is a 1 or a 0. In quantum computing, it can be a 1. It can be a 1, it can be a 0, it can be a 1 and a 0, it can be a 0 and a 1. There are 4 states that can subsist at the same time. So the interesting thing in describing the difference between classical computing and quantum computing, classical computing, if you wanted to say what's the quickest way to get from here to, let's say Mount Rushmore, and the classical computer would compute one route, and then it would find another route, and it would compute that time, and then it would compute another time, and then it would, etc. But in quantum computing, it would go every possible route at the same time. And at the end, it would have the result in probably the length of, the length of time it would take the shortest one. So that's the difference, and the power is really huge. What's interesting about the quantum computers is they are going to be so powerful. The quantum computer that they expect to produce next year they say will be more compute powerful than all of the supercomputers that we have. That's assuming it's delivered on time. It's also assuming it's very stable, and that's one of the problems right now with these quantum computers. They need a very cold environment in order to operate, and they're not really stable yet. But they will be. And when they are available, they will have such computational power that they will be able to break the encryption that exists on classical computers, the current computers. So there's a big concern about the future, and we talk about post-quantum encryption as a critical issue and a critical concern that needs to be addressed pretty quickly. So the National Institute of Standards and Technology has developed guidelines for looking at the post-quantum cryptography world. They have produced draft guidelines now. Their suggestions right now is if you have a lot of applications and a lot of critical resources that use a lot of that have a lot of personal or other critical information, start prioritizing them now. Start knowing what your environment is and what you have available and what you use in order to perform the jobs or the services that you offer. You start looking at that now. They've developed, I think they had developed 4 algorithms. I think they now have 11 algorithms that will help protect certain systems in the post-quantum environment. And we think the quantum environment is going to come along in the 26, 7, 8, 9, that time period. We'll start to see workable machines. You can buy a machine right now for $5,000 from China. With 4 quanta, it doesn't do very much, but you can play with it. But I just want you to be aware that this is coming. So it's the encryption breakage that's going to be a key problem for governments at every level. The healthcare sector, there's a lot of personal information. The financial sector, a lot of personal information, etc. So I just want you now to be aware. So let me come to my conclusion. I've talked about cybersecurity, and we understand all the different things that can happen and that we need to defend against it. We also need to learn about offensive cybersecurity. Our students learn both. Defensive, we have degrees in defensive, and then offensive, which is the kind of thing that the NSA and particularly Cyber Command are involved in. So we do have people who need to learn both. And then we added artificial intelligence to the mix. And artificial intelligence and cybersecurity have a lot of interactions. So artificial intelligence can help cybersecurity by creating algorithms that help looking at these vast sets of signals that people are monitoring. As more and more signals are coming in, as more and more people are trying to break in, artificial intelligence can help the workforce do that. At the same time, and the one that's less often talked about, we need to protect artificial intelligence from people who would wish to seek harm. So we need to protect the data flows that go into artificial intelligence machines, whether the training data or the live data. Otherwise, we get what we call data poisoning. And so you won't get the same results out of the intelligence capability. But you also have to protect the model, because the model is sort of also the key. So there's a lot of work on data poisoning, not so much on protecting the models. And now there is work just beginning to bring cybersecurity in to the beginning development of the next generation of artificial intelligence capabilities. This is an international exercise that we happen to be involved in. So I thought I would mention that. But it goes 2 ways. Cybersecurity for AI, AI for cybersecurity. And then if we just add quantum computing to the mix, Quantum computing is the acceleration of power and capability. So everything that we're doing in cybersecurity, quantum computing can help us do it on an even bigger scale. So now we start thinking about the nation-state attacks and how we really can protect from not just one nation, but maybe 4 nations working in concert against us. How do we do that? And at the same time, it can power up artificial intelligence in a big way, which is why we need to know what it's doing and what its intent is and what its outcomes are and how effective they are for what we intended. So, and then we need cybersecurity for quantum because we need to protect the systems that currently exist, but then we'll have to protect the new systems, and we can use artificial intelligence in the quantum environment. So I see all of these 3 are intimately related together. And people around, around Dakota State and around South Dakota have been patting me on the head for the last couple of years when I talk about quantum, but I'm glad other people are starting to talk about quantum computing now. It is going to be important. I love it because I have a physics background, so it's sort of like going home in a way. But the other thing about this power, I call it the power, it's a power triangle. It's a heavy basis of computer science, so I don't want anybody to ignore the importance of computer science in this mix. It's there, the foundational support of all 3. But at Dakota State, we're now calling this power cyber. That's my term. I like create new terms. But you put the 3 together, you've got a very, very powerful combination. And I think now we're going to see this happening more and more. So just briefly, I've got 3 minutes. I thought I would cite for you, as of this last week, the number of available cybersecurity jobs in the United States was the order of 650 to 700,000 jobs. The Bureau of Labor Statistics has just upped its job projections in this area, in cybersecurity, and anticipate that it's going to go up by more than a third in the next 8 years. So we've already got 650 to 700,000 jobs vacant, and it's just going to increase quite dramatically. So the educational programs at Minot and elsewhere are and what you've got going in this state, very, very important. The other statistic that I thought was interesting came out of IBM, and it was just this week, and they said 40% of their workforce will need to be reskilled for AI in the next 3 years. So just, any organization is going to have to think about the reskilling and upskilling of their personnel to the AI environment. I'm not saying everybody has to get a degree, but there are other ways to move forward. So that's what I wanted to talk about, not just 1, not just 2 technologies, but actually 3, and say that these are all going to be on our radar screens. We've had the big burst on AI, I expect next year with the new machine that's been promised. That's going to be more powerful than all supercomputers. There's going to be another big burst into quantum computing. And I just saw the first article that actually said we have a shortage of talent in the quantum arena. I said, of course you have. You've been closing physics programs across the country for years. So the CHIPS Act is going to need this. We're going to need people in these fields that have been declining for lack of interest. And we need, absolutely, I think, Sean was absolutely right. We need to start in kindergarten, and we need to build this up so that we encourage a lot of young people, 1, to know, and 2, to develop their skills in these areas and actually move into what will be very, very good jobs in these areas in the future. And clearly in North Dakota, you've made a good move in that direction, and we hope in South Dakota we're doing something very, very similar to what you're doing. So I thank you for your attention and for your time this morning. Thank you.
All right. And she just whispered to me, and I got you back on time. That is amazing, right? So we appreciate that. All right. Well, with all of the fabulous conversations we had today, I want to thank all of our speakers. We had so many of them that flew in and drove in from great distances to be here with us. Clearly a big draw with the almost 500 in attendance with all of you. We just saw that we were over 950 people online viewing this this as well. So clearly, it's a very important issue for us. So thank you all for being here with us today. Thank you to my tremendous team who took this little glitch that we had with ease and got us back online, along with our phenomenal Livewire team. They really are truly the best of the best. So to our sponsors for supporting this event, and our communities and chambers across the Midwest for tuning in to the live stream. Our Upper Midwest region has a profound influence on both the nation and the world. It is imperative that we continue to have mornings like this to engage crucial conversations, collaborate, innovate, and foster a vision for a prosperous future. We have big opportunities and challenges ahead, and we will need to continue to come together and work together to achieve success. Have a great day, and we'll see you at the Midwest Energy Summit in November. Thank you so much.